up, everybody? This is Darreck Kirby with the Dallas Prospect. I am here tonight with an exciting short show for you, albeit short show. We're going to do a preview of the Big 12 Championship game this Saturday at Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium, formerly known as Cowboy Stadium. And we are going to have a great rematch between the Oklahoma Sooners, ranked number 3 in the college football playoff rankings, against number 11 TCU. Now, it's a rematch of a game that was played just a couple weeks ago and that Oklahoma won pretty convincingly, but it still brings certain dangers to it given TCU's defensive acumen and the fact that now, obviously, they've had a chance to see up close and personal everything OU wants to throw at them, and now they have to offset that with, their adjustments. And Gary Patterson, TCU's head coach, is known for his defensive adjustments and scheming. So, with all of that said, here in a bit we are going to have actually an exciting guest here, RJ Young, the man who covers Oklahoma football as only he can. His YouTube channel, RJ Young Writes, is pretty much a beacon for Oklahoma Sooner fans. I know that anytime... I'm at the point now where if I want Sooner news, I'll look to RJ, and then I'll go check out like Bleacher Report or something like that. Now, I'm based out of Dallas now, obviously, Dallas Prospect, but all the same, I have strong Norman roots and everything there, so it's nice to see someone come along and who can really just kind of talk with and connect and build a community around all of that. So I'm looking forward to having him on today. We're going to talk a little bit about, of course, previewing the Big 12 Championship game. Also pick his brain a little bit on, Gary Patterson's recent comments on Baker, Big 12 season award controversy. I saw he uploaded a video on that, venting a little bit earlier tonight, so that should make for some good listening there. And just the general, confusion surrounding everything with the college football playoff. So, I'm going to go into a quick little break here. I'm going to get RJ on the line, and we are going to get rolling, guys. Okay, and we are back. Now, we're joined now by the one and only RJ Young, the great YouTube channel, everything Sooners, whether football. I saw you even did a little bit of basketball. But yeah, we're ready to dive into the Big 12 Championship game, OU and TCU, and to really just talk about all... It's been a busy week with the Sooners and everything. RJ, how you doing?
Yeah. I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's not just been a busy week. It's been a volatile week, man. I can't remember so much utter disgust about a team that is making history. I mean, this is unparalleled outside of Oklahoma. So it's just been interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw you posted something earlier. I think it was like right as I was kind of like drawing up a note, like, oh, maybe this would be a good thing to talk about. I saw within like a minute or two of me seeing the news that you had a quick video up kind of venting on the Big 12, season awards and all of that. Obviously, everything from, offensive first team, second team, all of that.
Yeah, I was pissed. I'm still pissed. 'Cause, I haven't seen this kind of utter disrespect for a good football team, a great football team, ever. I just haven't. I mean, from the college football playoffs ranking at number 3, somehow putting Clemson at number 1, who's 11-1, but also has a loss to Syracuse, who I believe is 4-8. When OU's loss is to a good Iowa State team who's 7-4, that missed me. And then you got a 2-loss Auburn team that vaulted to number 2. I mean, and all OU has done is lead the country in yardage per game. You got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. You got this bevy of running backs led by Rodney Anderson who are just tearing people apart. You got a first-round draft pick at left tackle. You know, I get it in August, right? Because everybody's asking the same questions we were asking, which is, oh, my God, where are the playmakers? Oh, my God, is Lincoln going to be okay?
Right.
Do we really want to give the keys to the car to a guy this young? But all of those questions have been answered with style, dude. So, like, 12 awards, the thing that really just bothers me is Baker Mayfield was not a unanimous pick for all Big 12 first-team quarterback. Now, it seems that one person didn't vote Baker Mayfield to start, so I can only assume that it'd be a guy like Mike Gundy who thinks his quarterback is better. But he's not, dude. Like, he got beat by Baker Mayfield. Let's start in there.
Right.
All right? And then you have the Unitas Award tonight, right, which was just more piling on.
Yeah, that was what I was actually going to bring up.
Beating out Baker. Yeah, I mean, even with that, and then Orlando Brown and Bobby Evans and Eric Wren and Drew Samia, you know, and Ben Powers, and being left off the finals list for the Joe Moore Award. I mean, all this week, it seems to just be terrible.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely seems to be a bias against. I mean, obviously, this doesn't explain like the Big 12 all first team and offensive first team, defensive first team, all that. But in terms of like the national award perspective, there does seem to be just a very stark Big 12 bias in general. And I understand that the Big 12 statistically doesn't have a lot of teams that rate great on defense. TCU's an exception there. But, I mean, not many conferences have as much talent with regard to running a spread offense and all of that. It's a more explosive offense to be asked to guard week in, week out, except for, I guess, K-State, who, you know, kind of does their own thing. They don't really run a spread.
No, I get that. I see that argument. But actually, it was Gary Patterson, of all people, who put this to bed, man. Look, Gary Patterson said, if everybody had to play Oklahoma State and Oklahoma every year, you know, they'd get to see it ain't easy to hold them under 35 either, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that the defenses are so bad. It's that the offenses are so good. Now, that said, I don't think that that's an excuse for having a bad defense or even a defense that doesn't rank in the top 25. I don't, because if you see an air raid, and you see an air raid everywhere you go in this conference except Kansas State, you should gear your defense towards stopping the air raid. Now, if you can't stop the air raid, that's on you as a defensive coordinator. I don't think that that's, you know, you get to ding the offenses for running up the score and running up the yardage because the defenses haven't adapted.
Right.
But that's also me, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And obviously OU, the one area this team feels like it's kind of possibly held back is certainly defensively. And I don't think, and I know you certainly agree with this, it's not anything to do with the talent they have there. It's more with the scheme and approach that defensive coordinator Mike Stoops employs.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I've done videos and videos of I mean, not just tearing him a new one, but also deconstructing his defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can tell you how to beat it, and I can tell you how to fix it, and I can tell you why it doesn't work. All right? It's not because there's not enough talent on that side of the ball. I mean, the Defensive Player of the Year plays for Oklahoma. We know this. One of the Defensive Freshman of the Year plays middle linebacker at Oklahoma. All right? And that's leaving out probably the best overall athlete on the defensive side of the ball. I still believe it's Caleb Kelly. You know? I mean, that kid can play every linebacker position, and he could flex out to safety if you wanted him to. And he could also rush off the end. I mean, the pieces are there. But that, even so, the defensive line is the strongest unit on that side of the ball.
Right.
So when you're running 3-man fronts, instead of 4-man fronts, you look like an idiot. And I'm not gonna to say that you don't, because I've seen DJ Ward, I've seen Obo, I've seen Amani Bledsoe run down a screen that was good. Like, the screen was going to work. This is a West Virginia game. Justin Crawford had he had 3 blockers out in front of him. It was going to the house. I saw Amani Bledsoe come out of a 3-point stance and run down Justin Crawford. So don't tell me that you don't have the horses to go run, And, Kenneth Mann and Devontae Lampkin has been just a man in the middle. And I'm frustrated every time I see a 3-man front and every time I see these linebackers being hung out to dry.
Yeah, it's never a good thing to see Obo falling back in coverage. It's just not a way to... You play a guy to his strength, and when you have a guy that can wreck an offensive line like that, it doesn't make much sense to have him in pursuit of a running back or something, whether it's a wheel route or just dropping back into coverage. So, yeah,
God, that was hurtful.
Yeah,
like it was awful trying to see Obo running down a running back because that's not what he does.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what he does.
Yeah, it's definitely something.
Anyway, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're totally fine. You're the expert for OU football here, so people want to hear you more than they want to hear me. I'm just kind of the director steering, so to speak. But it's definitely a thing where I think the defensive scheme and everything has hurt them. I agree completely. I actually saw your video breaking down how you attack a Mike Stoops defense, and I absolutely agree. I think that it's one thing. I feel like Stoops in general is kind of something that was thrust upon Riley in the sense that Bob stepped down, just under 3 months before the start of the season. It just didn't feel like you really had time for Lincoln to evaluate whether or not he wanted to have someone else for defensive coordinator, or maybe he did just want to, at least test it out for a year. But it just kind of felt like the timing of it protected Mike, whether or not that was intended.
Well, and I don't gonna go that far because I don't think if Bob has the kind of foresight and the kind of humility to step down when he has the pieces, he has the horses to make a national title run, and to not want to do that himself, I don't see him putting in position a handshake deal of sorts that kind of keeps his little brother or his big brother around, not his little brother, his big brother around for however long. Also, we saw that when Lincoln brought in Ruffin McNeil as an assistant head coach to coach the defensive tackles, who, by the way, have been doing nothing but murdering people up front. So, the pieces are there, and Mike knows he's on a hot seat. He has to. I think the only thing that would save him at this point is winning a national championship, because it's hard to fire anybody after you win a national championship. So I hear that argument, and it makes a lot of sense, but I just don't see it happening because of the way that Bob Stoops stepped down.
Right. Yeah, he still has moments, I think, Mike, where he can really step up and do something. Obviously, the last 2 Sugar Bowls, Auburn and Alabama, OU stepped up defensively in ways that we didn't quite expect. I think especially last year, OU looked like they were absolutely ready to attack everything that Auburn was going to try and throw at them, especially the run defense. I thought was really stout last year in the Sugar Bowl. So maybe it's something where Mike Stoops, given enough time, can still give you a gem from time to time, but it seems like when he's having to guard against the spread week in, week out, that he's, I don't know, it seems like the approach isn't right, and that's putting us behind the 8 ball in a lot of games. But not...
Well, you kind of hinted at it, right? You kind of hinted at it. So I believe that Mike Stoops is his best self when he's running a 4-3 concept, which is why I've been saying he needs to run the 4-2-5 base, right? Because it takes advantage of all of your best players, and it puts your best unit on the field at all times. But also, in an Alabama, and even in an Auburn, you're seeing traditional pro-style offenses. Offenses Mike Stoops knows how to beat. But I also got to bring this up in regard to the 2014 Sugar Bowl. That defense was good, you know, and Aaron Colvin did a great job of shutting down Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
But Eric Stryker manhandled, owned the left tackle at Alabama. You know, he was told, hey, man, we don't need you to drop back. We don't need you to look for screens. Your job is to go get a quarterback or read a running back and go to work. And all he had to do was beat, you know, a first-round draft pick at left tackle every single down. And we saw a 6', 220-pound Eric Stryker have his way with a 6'5", 320-pound NFL-ready tackle at Alabama. So what I'm saying here is I think you're onto something when you say he cannot put together defense that can beat a spread. But, man, we play against spread offenses 9 times a year at a minimum.
Right.
All right? And we can't afford to be dropping games to Iowa State because, well, your defense isn't built to beat Iowa State. I mean, to hell with that, bro. I need a defense that's built to go and destroy people at every level and every scheme, and a 4-2-5 allows them. That's the other thing. You can't coach players to a system. You have to adapt to your personnel, and that shows your weaknesses as a coach. If you cannot look at the pieces that you have and put them in the best position to win, and that is my major critique on Mike Stoops, is I continue to see him leads in here and then misuse them, and it's frustrating to me. It's just frustrating as all hell.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's definitely a shared frustration. I think the vast majority of the fan base has with you. So, pivoting slightly towards the opponent this weekend, TCU, Gary Patterson made some kind of interesting comments earlier this week in a press conference. He kind of brought up the whole thing about, you know, the warm-up line and everything, how there wasn't like a clear path to the TCU sideline in Norman a couple weeks ago, and how that forced the players basically through the line. And, you know, Baker, I guess, hits one of the TCU players with the ball in the head or something as the team is going through. It seemed definitely like Patterson was kind of implying that was more intentional and that the roots of that kind of date back to Texas Tech. What's your feel or just general reaction to that, I guess?
Look, I have lots of feels on this, but the first one is Gary Patterson's trying to stir the pot. All right, we've demonstrated as an offense, as a defense, that we can be provoked. All right,
mm-hmm.
Whether right or wrong, we have shown that the chippiness with us is not it's not fake. All right, we come to fight, and if you pick on us, we're gonna fight back. Now that said, Gary Patterson knows that he doesn't have the horses to run. So if he can get inside Baker Mayfield's head in particular, but everybody's head at OU, then he thinks he has an edge. This is not only the effect that he's trying to impart right now, because Gary Patterson is a smart man. We know this. We know that he can put together a stout defense. You know, we know that he's consistently going to find ways to put his athletes in the best position to succeed. But I think he knows from the game, 38-31, where OU let off the throttle, that we have him anytime we want him. So the only way to win this game is to try to make it chippy, to try to introduce personal fouls into it and get the referees involved. And also, you know, it's got to stick in his craw that he had an opportunity to get Baker Mayfield twice,
mm-hmm.
and he let him get away.
Yeah.
You know, before Baker Mayfield made it to OU, you know, he had an opportunity to have him 2 times. And I think that he's still hitting himself for that, and Baker's still hitting him for that, because, you know, the kid is right to hold a grudge. I would.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing about that, about his comments and kind of stirring the pot, like you said, it's curious that someone would still take that approach, because we've seen that the last 2 weeks as well, obviously, with Kansas and West Virginia. Situations where you have vastly inferior opponents trying to get into the head, but we know that Baker plays better when he plays angry. If he already has a huge chip on his shoulder, if you just add to that, you're not going to psych him out. I haven't seen a game in his career where it looked like because he got worked up or something where he started playing worse. At least not that I can think of.
Well, no, and I think you're right there. I think, but also stuff like the crotch grab. If he'd have done that on the field of play,
mm-hmm.
You know, that would have been unsportsmanlike conduct,
True.
right? And you get 15 yards there. So there are ways that can hurt. Now, is it going to affect his play? No. But just as we see with Orlando Brown, where it seems like he's going to pick up that obligatory personal foul, you know, you got to be able to rein it in when it's time to rein it in. And like he did against West Virginia, he's breaking up fights. He's going to the sideline, and then he's celebrating. That seems calculated. That seems like a deal he and Lincoln had made, which is be yourself on the sideline, you know, because if you're doing it on the field of play, it can get us hurt. And we can't win football games. Well, we could, but we have a better chance of winning football games if you're if you're in the game. All right? So try to keep yourself in the game and be Baker everywhere else. You know, and I think that's something that Gary Patterson would be stupid not to try to capitalize on. You know, even if it's jawing at Baker from the sideline.
Yeah, fair point there. Okay, so kind of shifting focus to the actual game itself, played this weekend at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. I think it's an early kick. It's like 11:30, right?
Yeah, it's 11:30 a.m.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that. I was thinking for some reason that was going to be like a 7 o'clock thing or something. Yeah. But
nah, this conference, man, like it's. Yeah, I mean, you ought to go back and take a look at how many 7 o'clock games this conference has played.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you know the primetime games in this conference, they're non-existent. That's why everybody was so excited about OU Texas Tech, dude. It was a night game.
Yeah.
We're playing games at 11 o'clock. We're playing games at 2:30. Look, man, we want national exposure. Like Miami Clemson is going to be on Saturday at 7 o'clock. Now, that should be us. We're a top 10 team playing a top 10 team.
Right.
You know, but this conference, it signed up with Fox, and it's getting the hose now. You know, because you want to be, as much as I hate to say it, you're going to get better time slots. You're going to get better exposure if you're signed with Disney, with ABC and ESPN, because Fox has demonstrated they're not going to be able to give you that that primetime slot, or they're going to give it to the Big Ten. You know, so I think when it's time to renegotiate these contracts, you need to get out of Fox. You need to go somewhere else so we can get out of these 11:30 Big 12 championship games.
Yeah.
At Jerry World? Are you kidding? You know, I got friends that are like, well, I guess I got to start drinking at 9:30. You know, which is crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
that's definitely pretty unforgivable there. I did a double take when I first saw it posted, like, oh, that's clearly got to be like a placeholder that whoever posted the time just hadn't gotten around to updating yet. It's clearly got to be at least a 3 o'clock, but oh well. Regardless, we got number 3 Oklahoma and number, I believe, 11 TCU. This is definitely a game we obviously saw it a couple weeks ago, as we mentioned. OU handled them there, 38-20. It's interesting to me this time around because while OU didn't score in the second half a couple weeks ago, I think that's more that OU didn't want to show all of their cards, knowing the rematch was likely. Do you get that kind of feel from it, or do you think it was just general run the ball, don't worry about anything else?
Oh, when Baker Mayfield only throws the ball 6 times in one half, you know that you're playing vanilla offense. Mm-hmm. Now, I also know that myself and others wanted to see us run it up, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to defer to Lincoln when it comes to the offense, because he's demonstrated, unlike Mike Stoops, he's smarter than me. You know, like that's another why I'm so upset with Mike Stoops is if we're smarter than you are, then you're not doing your job. But right. Lincoln, I mean, I'll watch the game plan that he comes out with, and you know, I'll give it the same look that I give Mike Stoops' defense, and I'll be like, wait a second, I never knew that you could. Wait, look at what you're doing. You know, even with the misdirection stuff. So I think, you know, and when he first got here with the trick plays and whatnot, you know, he got something in the bag. So, yes, for Gary Patterson and the TCU fans to try to run around saying that they stopped OU in the second half is wishful thinking, you know, and they're allowed to wish and they're allowed to dream. That's their team. But I know that it was a vanilla offense, and I expect to see it again if OU goes up by 31 in the first half again.
Right.
You know, because then you got 2 more games to play. and you want to have something else that you can pull out when you need it most.
Yeah, I forget. It was someone I was talking to, just another college football fan, not an OU fan. And I remember we've been talking in all of these different scenarios for how the college football playoff rankings could come down, the 4 teams, and basically trying to make the arguments for and against. And I remember in one scenario he was outlining how Clemson, and now this was a week ago, so the scenario is different now, obviously, but a scenario in which Clemson would have gotten the nod over OU, and his logic was something crazy to the tune of like, if OU wins the Big 12 title, their second best win, basically, other than Ohio State, is beating TCU twice, who at that point will have 3 losses. I'm like, well, you can't give them credit for the win, but then devalue the opponent when they're really the only person beating that team. Like, you have to look at it in the full spectrum. You can't just pick and choose when you want to say it's a solid win versus an average win.
So, Darreck, I got to ask, was your buddy drunk?
No. He's a big Oregon
fan. Was he
fan.
high?
No, he's a big Oregon fan. Yep.
Oh, big things they're doing up there in Eugene this year. You know, not playing for conference championships. Anyway, so I look, that doesn't wash for me at all. You know, like, I don't even know where to begin with that scenario except to say, at that point, OU's 12-1 with a loss to Iowa State, who's 7-4. And then let's say, for the sake of argument, Ohio State beats Wisconsin. Well, we got the trump card on Ohio State. Now let's say that Auburn beats Georgia. All right, they're in, because we always knew that the SEC champ is going to get in because of the bias. And then you got Clemson and Miami. And that's the one where I think it could get wonky. All right? But that doesn't affect OU at all, OU related. But Clemson and Miami is the one that I think has the most to do with the shakeup of the overall college football playoff, because Miami's not a good football team. They just got 1 loss. That loss to Pittsburgh is bad on a lot of different levels. Because that loss to Pittsburgh also affects Clemson because Syracuse beat Pittsburgh. So, like, I don't know what you do with an ACC champ that's Miami.
Right.
All right? That's the only one that can really screw up the wheels to me, because the SEC champ is in. We're in, because TCU won't win. But, I mean, if TCU did win, we still get in. I don't see that one, man.
Yeah. Do you see a scenario where...
I get what...
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you see a scenario where the SEC perhaps gets 2 teams in, with Alabama still getting a nod, just because the committee has already shown that they strongly favor defense, although I would argue Alabama's is more vulnerable now than it has been in recent years by a mile. And just the general bias for Alabama, given their reputation and everything they've done in the last decade. Do you think there's a scenario where 2 SEC teams could get in and still kind of create some chaos in the rankings?
No. I think the only thing that could... the only way Alabama gets in at this point is if OU loses.
Yeah.
That's the only way they get in. The SEC champ is going to get in.
Okay.
All right? Ohio State or Michigan... Ohio State or Wisconsin. Wow. Ohio State or Wisconsin, I think the Big Ten champ, you could flip-flop on Ohio State or Alabama, and maybe Alabama gets in if Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship. But then Ohio State would be like, look, we're the conference champ. Alabama's not a conference champ. And I believe that you have no business playing for a national title if you can't win your conference.
Oh, fully
All right?
agree.
So that would be the way that 2 SEC teams get in. You get the SEC champ, and then Ohio State would get snubbed after winning the Big Ten championship. So like that's wrong on so many levels. And then you got conspiracy, and then you got people showing up to the committee's house going, wait a second, hold on, pump the brakes right quick. And they would be right to do that. And I don't think the committee wants to be in that kind of position. They already know that everybody wants their head, because their rankings don't make sense week to week, because there's no consistency in what they're doing. Like I'm not asking for them to be perfect. I'm asking them to be consistent in their criteria.
Right.
And it seems week to week it shifts. Well, wins are more important. No losses are more important. It's just, hey, man, stick to something. I don't care what you stick to, but I want to know that the criteria is the same every single week. Don't tell me eye test if eye test is not important next week. So, I mean, it's a bunch of humans, and we know, and that's what we wanted. But the only way that I see two SEC teams getting in is if those folks over there can convince themselves with their gorilla math that Alabama needs to be in without a conference championship.
Right.
Or Georgia, for that matter, or Auburn, for that matter. But no, I don't think you can be in the college football playoff without winning your conference championship. And God bless UCF, because they're going to get hosed, man. They're going to go undefeated, win their conference championship, and not play for a national title. That for me seals it with the 18 playoff.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're headed. That's where we have to be headed. You have your 5 power conference champs that get in, and then you have your 3 at-large bids. One would go to, that UCF team would get in. And then Notre Dame either join a conference or fight for the at-large bid because you don't want to share money with everybody else. That's the way that I think it needs to work, and I think that's the only way it can work. Because after 18s, then we're getting real watered down. But with 18s, you also got a longer season or a shortened season. Nobody wants a shortened season, but nobody really wants a longer season either. So it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. The only kind of thing, I agree fully that if you don't win your conference title, you shouldn't be really in the mix. I think it should theoretically go even a step further than that. If you're not even playing in the game, you definitely shouldn't be there, but we saw that happen last year with Ohio State. So the committee is as confusing now as it was then. I definitely think it's a flawed system because, as you said, there's no consistency to it. They change their argument on a week-to-week basis. They'll tell you this is why this team is ranked 1 or whatever compared to this team this week, and then the next week it'll be the complete opposite argument, but still justifying it all the same. So there's no consistency there, and I feel like for OU, as long as I felt better that they finally moved up to 3, although you would argue it's like, 2 of the last 3 weeks we've had 2 teams in the top 4 lose. So the fact that they've only moved from 5 to 3 in all that time is a little bit frustrating, but all the same, I think if they were at 4, there would have still been some concern, although I think OU still would have gotten the nod to go into the playoff even if they were the 4 seed, but I think at 3 they should feel completely confident at this point. There's no real question. If you win the Big 12 title, you're going to be in, and there's not really any difference between 2 and 3.
I mean, yeah, I'm not even entertaining that anymore, that they won't get in if they don't win the Big 12 title.
Mm-hmm.
That's solid. That's not going anywhere. Take care of business on Saturday, and you're in the semifinal. But the whole part about if you're not playing in your conference championship game, I think that gets a little bit too far into the minutiae. Either you're a conference champ or you're not. Because then you're talking about, well, we won. Wisconsin's like, well, we won our division. Or you got Michigan or Penn State or, my goodness, they were the sacrificial lamb with the top 25 ranking in the Big Ten. Northwestern was not a good football team, and yet.
Whoa.
They got one over Ohio State. They got one over Northwestern. Wisconsin, they got, that real quality win against Northwestern. So you're getting a little too deep into the weeds there for me. Like, sure. I want it simple. If you win your conference title, you get a chance to play in the playoff, in the 18 playoff, as opposed to having to worry about things like what you're considering, which is, well, if OU wins its Big 12 title, maybe UCF could jump them because they'd be undefeated and they won their conference title. Nah, I don't want to deal with that. I want it to be cut and dry for everybody so everybody knows the rules, and the rules are the same all year long. And that's my big problem this year with the college football committee. Yeah. The rules the goalposts keep moving. All right? stick a fork in the ground, tell me where I got to go, and don't move them. If I get there, I get there. If I don't, I don't. At least I know where I'm shooting, you know? I hate that. I hate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, turning focus to the game itself Saturday, I started to go to it earlier and I got a little sidetracked on that. What's your general feel? Is this a repeat of what we saw a couple weeks ago in Norman, or do you think it's going to be a closer win, one where OU has to kind of grind it out a little bit?
I could go either way. Look, I know that Gary Patterson can make adjustments. I know that Lincoln still got stuff up his sleeve. So, I don't know how the game is going to go. I just know how I want it to go.
Right.
You know, I want to see us hang half 100 on TCU, and I want to be able to sit the starters in the second half. You know, but from an X's and O's standpoint, I can't call it, man, because both of those guys are good at what they do. Now, Lincoln was way better at what he did than Gary Patterson, but you can't say that's going to be the case this time, because Gary Patterson now has not just film, but film of what OU does against him, you know, which is what you want. That's gold, especially if you got beat. Right. You know, so, I mean, I think we're getting a little too far into the what ifs as opposed to what we want to happen based on what we've seen. You know, so we know that they can go in there and they can whoop a little ass. We know that. But we also know that TCU is fast. Like, that was the one thing I took away from that game, especially in the first quarter. TCU's team speed is unmatched. They can fly to the football, but they ain't too big, you know? And if you want to line up and you want to run straight at them, you can. And I'll bet you see more of that. I'll bet you see heavy doses of Rodney Anderson, Trey Sermon, Abdul Adams. And then when you put 8 in the box, Hollywood's going to have to slow down to catch that football again.
Yeah.
You know, I think don't make it harder than it is. You know, make it as simple as possible, because I think that's the way the game goes. You know, when it comes down to who can make a play, that's what you want.
Absolutely.
That's what you want. That's all you can ask for, especially as a coach.
Yeah. I have obviously I think OU's going to win the game. I think it's going to be a little tighter than we saw in Norman. Obviously, as we've said a couple times now, you know, OU was able to just kind of coast in the second half, just play vanilla. Not Baker threw it only 6 times in the entire second half. So I don't think it's going to be necessarily that kind. I would like to see that kind of game, just to see styling on them and everything, especially after Patterson continues to try and stir the pot a little bit. But I do think that there are probably going to be adjustments made by TCU, and I think it's really probably going to be a grinded out game, kind of like for a while the Sugar Bowl was, I think, last year with Auburn. How, you know, it was a low scoring game for a while there in the first half, and then OU kind of broke it open and didn't look back. I think you could see something like that Saturday, where for a while TCU's able to kind of hang with them, but then OU's explosive skill players and everything, and, you know, Baker just are able to break away and hold it off at that point. So we'll see. It'll be a great game, I'm sure, and it should send Baker, no doubt, towards his first Heisman, his Heisman, OU's 6th as a university, and should send OU to the college football playoff for the second time in 3 years.
No, man, I'm going to tell you right now, even if they, God forbid, lose that game and Baker doesn't win the Heisman, we're rioting. All right, like I'm telling you, I'm having to entertain this after the Unitas debacle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to be okay if Baker Mayfield doesn't win the Heisman. I'm just not going to be okay. Like, I'm not even entertaining that possibility, because I know I'm not going to be okay. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you saw, but I got into it earlier with the Sporting News writer Mike DeCourcy, who wrote an article about how Saquon Barkley should be the Heisman Trophy winner. And, you know, his argument, and he's a columnist, for God's sake, his argument had more holes in it than the Titanic. And I was pointing them out to him, but he was saying the only thing that Baker Mayfield has done that's incredible is be efficient. Now, okay, yeah, he is the most efficient quarterback in college football history, for 2 consecutive seasons. But also, I mean, he put up 600 yards on a top 10 team. He beat another top 10 team, state team at Columbus, and then planted a flag on him. You know, I mean, there's just so much about that column that I just found terrible. But also, if that's the way the rest of college football is thinking, we got a problem, man. Because the rest of college football votes on this award, and if they can't see the facts, we got a problem. And I'm going to have to go and Google Maps where the Heisman Foundation is and go up there and have a little chat if Baker Mayfield doesn't win this trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm wondering where the writer DeCourcy, I think you said, I'm wondering where he's kind of based, if he's like in that Pennsylvania area where it's just, you know, his own kind of hopeful wishing bias kind of showed through, or if he is more of just a general national writer, maybe just trying to get headlines by making it sound like, you know, clickbait basically, where he's basically saying like, hey, here's something that kind of bucks the tradition or whatever that everyone else is thinking. I don't see any way that Baker doesn't win it at this point. I think the rest of the pack kind of fell out and fell off while he just continued getting stronger and stronger. So hopefully we don't have to worry about that. The only solace I could potentially find to that is I think this year, unlike the last 2 years, I think now, even if he won't say it, I think he expects to win it. And so I think that would add to the chip on his shoulder that he brings into the playoff.
Well, I mean, you know, look, I get it with everybody talking about the chip on his shoulder and fuels of the fire with all of these kids, to be honest with you. But at some point, get the recognition that they deserve. You know, I'm all for fueling the fire, and I'm all for, you know, making a list and checking it twice with the naughty names. But I'm not going to be okay to know that Orlando Brown doesn't win the Outland Trophy. You know, like I was not okay with the Joe Moore Award snubbing this offensive line, especially knowing that Notre Dame's offensive line made it. And Joe Moore was a former Notre Dame coach, and the trophy was founded in his name, and there's a legacy committee with Notre Dame coaches and players on it. I'm not okay with that. You know, I need these kids. You know, that's why I was so upset about the Big 12 awards is, look, man, after the season, that kind of stuff matters. You know, it matters for recruiting, it matters for OU, but it also matters to them individually. You know, I never want to forget that these are 18 to 22-year-old kids, and they have the rest of their lives to live after this. And I want them to get the most out of it that they possibly can. So if they deserve an award, give them the award. Don't hold out on them because you got some kind of political agenda. I'm looking at you, Mike Gundy. You know, don't try to snub the kid because you got beat by him. Just give the kids their just due. And I'm not saying, like, of all things, for instance, you know, there's this big uproar about Rager at TCU winning Newcomer of the Year over CeeDee Lamb. Now, no matter how you feel about that, I'm also not saying take the award from Rager. Well, I'm also not saying James Washington doesn't deserve to be all Big 12 first team, or David Sills, for that matter, who could probably walk away with the Biletnikoff Award. I'm not saying that at all. I want those kids to get their just due. But don't rob my kids. You know? I mean, like, how does Bobby Evans not make an all Big 12 team? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's not about, at that point, you know, it's bias at that point. It's not about whether or not he can play ball. You know, and if you need to make a third team or you need to make a two deep, then do that. But don't leave these kids out that deserve to be there. So I understand what the fuels of the fire, but I also want to see the kids get their recognition. You know, and that's one of the reasons I'm saying I'm prepared to go have a little chat with the Heisman Foundation if they don't give Baker Mayfield this trophy, because then you're robbing the kid, the most outstanding football player in the country, because you have some sort of agenda that you want to get across. That's not right, and it's not fair.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. But all right, well, I won't keep you. It's a little late, obviously, after 9 o'clock. So, thank you for being on, RJ. if OU does make the playoff like we expect, would love to have you on again and everything, previewing the game. But yeah, if you guys haven't already, check out his YouTube channel, RJ Young Writes. I believe your Twitter handle is RJ_Young. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Is there anything, I guess, you want to say on sign off, or anything you want the audience to know?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun. Thanks for letting me rant and rail and go on a little bit too long than I probably should have.
No trouble at all.
And yeah, send me a link.
Yeah,
send me a link so I can share it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. I'm gonna edit it all together. I'm gonna try and have some clips, graphics, things like that that go along with it, and we'll get it posted and I'll send it to you. So
good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, RJ. I think that's going to wrap up the show for the evening. And Boomer Sooner.
All right, brother. See ya.